during that debate. And let's kickstart that particular conversation by having a listen to this soundbite.
And the three colleagues of mine actually are part of the cartels that I want to deal with. I will tell you who the cartels are. The cartels are people who have made money through shady business deals.
I like the energy in which he likes describing cartels when he really does not understand what cartels are. And when you try to get a solution of how he will handle cartels.
Okay, so we'll just try and get the correct sound bites that, take a look at how the candidates addressed health issues. But right now, Victor, let's just talk about how this, and you actually asked these particular questions yesterday during the debate regarding leadership and service delivery. Why are you satisfied by how the candidates addressed these issues?
Well, I think that was one of the standout issues because, it wasn't responded to well at all. None of the candidates either understood the question or had a clear plan that could have been presented. My question was very specific. We are looking at fundamentals, the building blocks of a health system, and we are speaking of just 3, not all 6. And of the 3, we chose the most pertinent ones. We spoke about leadership and governance. And again, in healthcare, we are aware that our health systems have not worked very well, principally because in the health sector, we suffer from cartels as well. In areas of supplies, we suffer from corruption. We suffer from issues of lack of integrity. The human resources for health, I think we've probably had more than 100 different strikes. Within Nairobi County alone, maybe as many as 12 or so. As we speak, today is day 30 of the nurses' strike. We were looking at having plans to meet with the health workers, listen to their grievances, and put forth a plan that would, prevent strikes into the future. We're talking about service delivery. Right now, for basic health services, you have to either go to a private institution or a national referral hospital, being Kenyatta now. Yet, across the county, there are very many facilities, land that is at a premium available to health facilities, but we have not, invested adequately in these areas. I didn't hear a particular plan that was going to improve healthcare, which was a big disappointment, I must say, because one of the core functions of the county government is to provide healthcare to its people. Not only that, but healthcare affects every single individual, across this country.
But Dr. Kidero tried to talk about, the devolution of these health functions and ensuing devolution of resources to facilitate this, saying that 80% of the functions were devolved, but only 50% of resources, followed this, thus making the implementation rather hard. Is this something that is a reality and that is affecting service delivery?
Well, it's difficult for me to verify what is stated on a public platform. But again, I am less forgiving to leadership for, what I would call an excuse. If you have a role and you've applied for a job, then you have to do that job. You may not have the liberty to say, okay, we're going to pass the buck here. Now, you've had a period of time to perhaps approach the issue differently. Now, again, if you look at what institutions like NHIF or even MEDS have done, in just about 3 years, NHIF has moved from an institution that was spending 45% of its collections on administration, and now they're spending much more on healthcare. The packages have improved tremendously, and as we speak, NHF is a game changer in healthcare provision. Look at MEDS, an non-governmental organization, and in just a span of less than 10 years, they've managed to reduce the rate of counterfeit drugs from 35% to just under 10%, and they're providing drugs cheap, affordable way. What tangible points do we have from our governments? Now, we may not have that now, but at least have a plan. If you have a plan, you're aiming for the stars, you hit the moon. I didn't hear that come out clearly.
Talking of tangible points and plans, we now have the sound bites from how they talked about these health issues. Let's listen to them and see if they actually were leading somewhere.
I believe that a visionary leader of Nairobi must get quickly into negotiations with the national government so as to find a solution that would address healthcare that would be universal, that would be from Mombasa to Kisumu, and it would have benchmarks.
We have to find profit centers in the expenses that the county government is involved in so that we can allocate more to the health sector, so that people can go for primary care in their estates.
Resources are supposed to follow function, and when the health services was devolved, 80% have gone to the counties. But you find that the financial resources that go to the counties is 50%, which is not in line or consistent with the functions that have gone. So I think, I mean, for us in counties to be able to give better services, we need that extra 30%, which is being retained by the national government, to come to us.
Okay, so two of these candidates, that's Miguna and Peter Kenneth, talked about universal healthcare, which is actually a huge thing. It's part of the sustainable development goals. But like you said, I didn't hear exactly how they intend to achieve this. Saying that we want to make it cheaper, but exactly how are you going to make basic health services cheaper? I don't know. What are some of, is this a conversation that, you know, as health practitioners, you get? Is there a common kind of platform that you talk about these things with governance?
Yeah, and certainly the funny thing is that healthcare, the solutions are pretty straightforward and simple. For example, right now we have unemployed doctors and unemployed nurses, and a doctors and nurses shortage in the country. As we speak, 800 doctors unemployed since May, and this is the situation. We have equipment suppliers, and we have equipment at affordable rates, but we don't take this up. We opt for very expensive equipment that may not really be able to help us. Now, if, for example, we decided that in every health facility, health center within the city of Nairobi, then we'd employ a certain number of these jobless doctors and this number of jobless nurses, and therein we have health workers. Then we, not tremendous investments, laboratory equipment in the region of about 2 million shillings per facility, we are able to place something there and have services running. You know, we now have managed equipment services that has been rolled out by the national government to enable us to do radiology services, to give that to every single client. And by the way, NHIF is now paying fully for health people who seek healthcare in public facilities. So the concept of financing in healthcare has improved tremendously. So again, what is our plan collectively as a county to leverage these advantages and achieve something? There are steps everywhere. I think the biggest challenge will always remain, I think, for us, is leadership. Leadership in healthcare and in every other area.
All right, so health governance, Javas, and I don't know how this, in my opinion, this didn't really come out that well yesterday.
One, health is a devolved function.
Right.
And these candidates needed to have appreciated that hard fact. Secondly, when you look at a city such as Nairobi, with way over 4 million residents, when you look at every family in this city, nearly each family, close to 2/3 of residents of Nairobi, are just an ailment away from disaster. And if we don't fix healthcare, we're not fixing anything at all.
Right.
Because a healthy population is a population that is ready to work for the progress of a nation. Now, yes, as Governor Kidero indicated, that not lots of resources have been released by the National Treasury to follow the functions that were devolved. And of course, as we know very well, that so little was left to the national government with policy and then management of referral facilities. It is important that when it comes, for example, with the County Integrated Development Plan, which Governor Kidero did not even speak to, of this county, you should have spoken to some critical issues, for example, how and to what extent they are going to make sure that within certain units of residential or inhabitants, they are going to have a functional, well-equipped health facility, whether it's a health center or a dispensary. And you know, of course, you know very well that just having a health center without necessary medicine, without having the health professionals to man that facility, we're not doing so much to help the health situation.
And a lot has been talked about, you know, this whole referral system and the kind of technology that can come to support that, you know, telemedicine and whatnot. These are some of the issues that some quarters are saying have not really been explored, even down to the county levels.
If you allow me, in 2012, we did a report on strengthening health systems in public institutions. And back then, I was the chair of the Doctors' Union. And we worked on this with the national government. And what we said is we set a certain standard in terms of what is required in every facility across the country. Now, the cost of that was manageable. Across the country, it would have been 157 billion initially over 2 years, and then another 100 billion a year after. For the county of Nairobi, it's actually a fraction of that. And they're not unrealistic expectations.
So what was the gap between that?
The gap in healthcare remains this. Healthcare requires a leader who has a vision for healthcare, has a passion for changing healthcare, has the ability to make the changes that are required, and has the integrity to follow through without taking shortcuts. If you look at just a few years ago, all the private institutions were referring patients to Kenyatta National Hospital. You know, that's a national facility. What happened in just about over a decade, such that has changed? You see, in a private facility, the doctors there are almost 100% African, 90-something% Kenyan. The equipment are not breaking down in the private facilities. Why will they break down in the public facilities? The patients are the same. What is this limitation that stops us from making the necessary investments? You see, it is a process that can actually be reversed. You know?
All right. So I know we are almost, time runs really fast. So we want to talk about youth unemployment right now. And of course, one thing was clear, that every candidate seemed to know the numbers, seemed to know exactly how many young people are unemployed in Nairobi. And I don't know if you have the sound bites ready. We can just play that before we delve into that discussion to see exactly how each of these candidates address these issues. All right, so maybe that's not, but we don't have the sound bites ready. But what has been said is that politics and corruptions are among the leading, impediments to employment opportunities. First, because we don't have systems to develop skills for young people, and even when the skills are employed, then we don't create opportunities for employment. What's your take about how this entire scenario is and how it was addressed yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I talk about it, I just want to say something small about health.
Okay.
A young person who is unemployed cannot even afford 500 shillings for the NHIF. So health is something that is not accessible for very many young people. So they choose not to even go to a health center because they cannot afford it.
Right.
And then when you're going and a syringe is 30 shillings, they would rather just vumilia and then use that money for something else and eat.
And so
that's an issue.
Trickle-down effect, because there was also a World Bank report recently that said in Kenya, 1 million Kenyans every year are plunging deeper into poverty because of the cost of healthcare.
Yes.
So one thing leads to another, poverty, healthcare, what?
There are things that
crime.
There are things that a country that is serious about its affairs does not compromise on. Number one is healthcare.
Right.
Number two is its security. Number three is the education, because it's through education that you build the population, and you can add the rest. So those three. So in my view, when I look at, 30 days, I don't know if somebody needs to shake us, 30 days of doctors being on strike, and we are in a campaign period, and none of the political divides is addressing that issue. I don't know if we can.
It's puzzling,
It is mind-boggling.
To say the least.
One of the things that we've not...
I think you have the solution to this puzzle.
The thing is this. I think we need leaders who've got a backbone. And we need to have politicians who can develop a serious backbone to solve issues of leadership in this country. For example, even as you asked the question about the youth in this country and employment and corruption, I'll tell you this. One of the issues is this. And all these things have got a cascading factor. Education is a right, even as provided for in our constitution.
Absolutely.
But look at it this way.
As is healthcare, actually.
How many county governments are seriously investing in infrastructural development of education in every county? Now, how many counties, for example, and governors are very keen by doing the issue of infrastructural development to make sure that they improve transition rates from early childhood all the way to primary to secondary to whether it's vocational institutions or even universities. And much more than that, there is always something that these leaders in this country confound me. When you talk about youth and employment, they tell you that we'll create entertainment and entertainment centers for the youth. Look, the thing is this. Some of us here, most of the time, most of us even around this table are youth still. And I'll tell you this. They need to calibrate the levels of youth, the categories of youth in this country.
Well, let's remember it's from age 0 to 35, which was said to us yesterday.
No, it is not. That was
I'm
an
just
error.
quoting one of the candidates.
However, if there are youth who've gone to school, finished university or finished the various vocational training institutions, and they are in pursuit of employment and happiness for that matter. How do you meet their needs and interests? Not every youth needs an IT facility to go and sit there with a laptop. There are those youth whose challenge today is to see how to increase their revenue streams. That's a challenge to them. There are those youth whose present quest today is getting a good education. And there are those youth whose passions and interests are, for example, in matters, entertainment, whether it's music or other co-curricular activities.
Don't you think the new curriculum is looking to address that? Okay, let's hold that thought of the new curriculum and listen to what our good candidates had to say about youth unemployment. Then we continue with that discussion.
69% of Kenyans are unemployed, including in Nairobi. So it's a very serious problem. And when it comes to youth, it's about 75%. I've come up with an infrastructural based manifesto that will build roads, build light rail.
And it's a time bomb waiting to tick. Unless we create a business environment that promotes investments.
Ningependa kupeana mfano. Nilipoona ndugu yangu hapa amezembea kikazi kwa sababu serikali kuu bado inapatiana pesa ya youth empowerment, wa vijana kujengiwa modern sheds, wa mama kuwa empowered, lakini sababu ya ufisadi na ndugu yangu alikuja na waizi kutoka Mumias, pesa yote inaishia kwa matumbo ya wezi. Mimi nikaona Nairobi kuna haja ya kuaddress hili swala la ukosefu wa kazi. Nilikuja na Sonko Rescue team yangu ambayo niliajiri sana vijana wengi sana.
Joe, 1.2 million people get into the job market every year, and 700,000 of them end up in Nairobi. That's why Nairobi has such a big, high population.
Okay, I'll just come to you, Kimosop. Because we have only 5 minutes. And even as we talk about unemployment, and Kidero alluded to this, that we have so many of, the new graduates coming into the labor market every year, about 1.2 every year, but most of them come to Nairobi because, of course, this is the economic hub. But now with the devolution, you expect that we have devolved resources, that we have, the counties are supposed to be some sort of economic hubs. Shouldn't we get more opportunities now down at the other counties also?
I hear you, but that will not happen until the counties have really built and distinguished themselves as to be known for different economic hubs. I know there are, like the way you would say Detroit is a manufacturing hub, so if you have those skills, IT in Massachusetts, that's the US case that we can have here. But when I look at the youth question, I think there's somebody said that we do not need to see the youth as a problem to be solved, but rather an opportunity to be exploited. In my view, in the Far East countries like Philippines and even Thailand, what they normally do is that they've seen how to integrate the informal economy, informal sector, into the formal sector. A very, very small, she actually pointed out like a market like Gikomba. How do you link such a market to be able to be accessed by everybody in a way that those guys are ready to pay taxes? Now, that's number one. Number two is, look at the way we have the cheapest food in town is chips and maybe sausage, which is actually one of the most unhealthy, and we are struggling with NCD. If you are able to, like I've seen in other countries, they help to train those mamas who sell food like githeri and the food that are indigenous, and it's in a way that they do it in a hygienic, you separate. If we invest in such an infrastructure that they're able to participate and proudly get an income, I can tell you we can generate a lot of jobs.
Solutions.
Okay, very briefly, because we have to go to the last topic in 2 minutes.
One, to solve the part of the solution to the youth issues, let the cost of business permit for startups and youth businesses be slashed to half. All right? Okay. That will help the youth. The other thing is this. Any youth-related organization or affiliated or a youth-owned organization or business, as long as it's a startup, the governor and, in fact, should work closely with the KRA to make sure that within the first 5 years, there's no paying of taxes.
Let me just actually join it with what was going to be the next topic, which is the ease of doing business. And we saw one of the candidates, Sonko, say that he was going to completely abolish the cost of permits for mama mbogas and, for the low-income earners. Do you think this is actually a feasible strategy?
It is feasible, But you see also when you look at that whole bracket and the numbers, because when it comes to raising revenue, you're looking at the numbers. It would be important for them to see then, if at all you want to reduce the taxes that you collect from the mama boggers and the lower cadre business people, then it's a question of to what extent, to what level do you want to reduce it, so that also it does not choke you of lack of revenue for the businesses that you want, because lack of revenue again will impede in the progress and the development that any governor wants to make through their plans.
Right, and I just want to get Daktari's
yes, because I really want us to look at this debate differently. I think the youth in this country are not regarded as early as they should.
Yes.
We talk about giving youth opportunities to go into IT. What about youth in positions of leadership? What about youth being given chances to become CEOs? You look at advertisements within county governments and they're asking for a high-level position, they're asking for 10, 15 years of experience. You have a brilliant young man who's just graduated, absolute best in that field, but can't get the job because you're asking for age, If you look at our country, back in the 60s and 70s, Tom Mboya, Mwai Kibaki, they were young people and they made tremendous plans. I think it's time we recognize the value of youth in leadership. Now,
so you think this should, because I've heard that a lot, is this an issue that needs to be addressed with policy?
Certainly. I'm not that young. I'm fairly old, but I still have to, and I have a track record. I still have to prove I'm out of the bracket and I have to prove
guys,
why
we're out of time, so I just want your concluding thoughts. Finish that as you give us your concluding thoughts.
Yes, on this one, really, for the youth, the whole thing has to be in line with creating opportunities for investment in addition to giving them space for leadership and to be heard. And certainly, if you can give them the tax credits or you can ensure that the cost of doing business is manageable, that's a good thing. But fundamentally, the cost of living is a real issue. If you're a young man trying to start a family, grappling with healthcare, education, that's a problem. So if you can provide social services in this space, that itself goes a long way. Now, one more thing.
10 seconds we actually have 1 minute altogether to finish.
All right.
Okay. So Nerima, I want to get your closing remarks, your take home from that debate, if there was anything.
Speaking on affirmative action for young people, if it's accessibility in terms of waiving, even starting a business, that cannot happen until we take care of corruption and public wastage. Because even if we look at the NYS at the moment, Uwezo Fund, the Youth Fund, they have opportunities for young people, but you will hear stories of corruption, young people cannot access it, or you're hearing only people belonging to a particular family have access to that.
So what's the solution?
The solution is dealing with corruption, and in the next few months, I will be looking at leaders who have solutions for that and reducing public wastage.
Okay. Javas, I trust you to do this in 20 seconds.
I don't intend to cast the darkness. I intend to put the candle on the table. Well, we've got the laws. Laws are not the problem. We've got the Urban Areas and Cities Act, the County Government Act, Intergovernmental Relations Act, and the Constitution, and very many other acts of the county government. It is important that beyond this, we step up our accountability, and we should not fear to hold any leader to account just because of various business affiliations or tribal inclinations, etc. I think the lack of accountability is that which is leading us to the horse.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we have done our closing remarks. And I want to thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Nerima, Javas, Victor, and Kimosop. Thank you very much. You have given us a lot of insights tonight. So thank you for joining us. And that's where we wrap up Roundtable tonight. My name is Sharon Momanyi. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing on KTN News.
In the Swiss International and Anna Mount Hotel, Nairobi.